I'll show you how to go from dull to colored with a few tricks. Some flowers just dry brown naturally, and it's mostly due to a lot of moisture, and that's really common in these tropical plants. The easiest way to color correct is to use spray paint. This works best for dried leaves and flowers that only need a single color without much dimension or blending. I'm gonna take my Monstera leaf and spray paint the front, let it dry, and then spray paint the back. Here's how they look fully dry. I already painted the back, and I also have an extra large Monstera leaf that I painted. You can see that the shade of green is darker when it dries, and it looks a little bit more natural. When it comes to spray paint, the most important thing is choosing the right color. And you want to choose a color that's a little bit darker than what your leaf or flower looks like when it's fresh. So I recommend choosing a color that's a few shades darker and has a satin or matte finish. The second method is the airbrush, and it's more challenging, but also you can add more layers of colors and make the color correction look more natural. If this is your first time using an airbrush, I recommend using regular airbrush paint just to learn the airbrush first and then trying this method. I'm going to be using acrylic paint and diluting it with water. I've mixed a few drops of paint with mostly water in the cup, and you need a very thin consistency for the airbrush or your brush will get clogged and it'll be really frustrating because you have to clean it out and start over. You want an almost water-like consistency, and I usually know that the paint is thin enough when the paint freely drips down the inside of the cup. So now I'm gonna take my paint and fill up my airbrush tank. I'm gonna take my airbrush and paint my orchid and my anthurium. I have my airbrush turned on at the highest setting, and it's also on the coarsest mist, and you can see that I'm slowly building color on the petal. This method does take a lot longer, but also because it's only spraying a little bit of pigment at a time, I have more control. I'm gonna let the orchid dry for a bit and move on to my anthurium in the meantime. And with the airbrush, you want to keep the paint flowing through the brush, or else it dries up really quickly and it'll clog up the whole system. So if you're gonna leave the airbrush unattended for more than 5 minutes, it's better to just dump the paint out, clean it out, and then fill it back up when you're ready to paint the next layer. this point, I've painted a few layers on all the flowers front and back, and I've cleaned out my airbrush tank, and I'm going to be filling it with pink diluted paint and coloring the center of the orchids. For the final layer, I'm going to use this mocha color and mix it with this rose color. I'm trying to create a final finish to my orchid petals, so then it's not so white and it's slightly pinkish, beigeish, and it looks a little bit more natural. I've diluted my paint, and I'm gonna fill up my airbrush tank with it and give all my orchids one final layer. And here's the final result. My orchids and anthuriums are dry, and I'm gonna put them in a box of silica so that any moisture that remains is captured before I put them in resin. I'll leave them in there for a few more days. Thanks for watching, and I hope this helped. If you want to see how these flowers cast in resin, please stay tuned and follow me on my Instagram.